let's take a look at Luke chapter 10, verse 30 and following. And this will be the first time that Laura gets to actually, pay attention. Because usually she's fighting the baby, All right. Jesus replied and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers, and they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. And by chance a priest was going down on that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise the Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion, and came to him and bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them, and he had put him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn to take care of him. On the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to this innkeeper, and said, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I return, I will pay you. Which of these do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell into the robber's hands? And so we have Jesus basically answering the question, who is my neighbor? And what he's showing in this parable, as everybody points out, is basically everybody's your neighbor. Even people that you would think wouldn't be your neighbor turn out to be your neighbor. But what I kind of want to focus on isn't necessarily what the Samaritan did for the man, but the significance of this action from the man in the ditch's perspective. See, let's go to John chapter 4 for just a second to get some context. So John chapter 4, we have Jesus talking to a Samaritan woman at the well. And this woman begins talking to Jesus in around verse 7. So Jesus tells her to give him a drink. And the Samaritan woman says in verse 9, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask for a drink, since I am a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And so, as you go on, you see that the woman asks a question in verse 20. She says, our fathers worshipped in this mountain. You people say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. So we got a lot of things going on between the Jews and the Samaritans, obviously, and there's a lot more than what we can let on now. But basically the point is that the Jews had no dealings with the Samaritans whatsoever. And not only that, but they didn't worship in the right place, right? They got the worship wrong. That's right. They had the worship wrong. They had no dealings with each other. These are basically like Alabama and Auburn fans, It's like Florida versus Florida State here, right? But it's a lot worse than that because it's not just some football game. It is a conflict between nations, conflict between people of varying dialects, varying races, varying accents, right? This is a national sort of divide that's going on here. And that's what Jesus is addressing in Luke chapter 10. Because as we know in Christ, there is no Jew, Greek, bond, free, male, or female. And even in the book of Acts, we have the gospel being preached to the Samaritans, right? So the gospel is able to overcome these boundaries that we put up through hyper-dependence upon the flesh. And it's problems that still go on today between people. So just imagine the man in the ditch. He's sitting there, hurt, scarred, beaten, bruised, lost all of his possessions, thinks he's going to die. He's been left for dead. And he sees a priest coming down the road. And he goes, oh man, my day is saved. A priest. I'm just so lucky. God has blessed me. Here comes a man of my own nation. Here comes a man who serves God day after day in the temple. Surely he's going to help me. But when he sees him, he passes him on the other side. And then a Levite comes, and he's probably playing the same scenario again in his head. And he's thinking, man, here it comes. The priest didn't help me, but he's got duties he's got to take care of. The Levite, he can help me. That's not as important of a position as a priest, I guess. And so when the Levite comes, he passes by on the other side. Then he sees a Samaritan, and you know what he's thinking already. Even lying there in the ditch, he's going, here comes that good-for-nothing Samaritan. There ain't no way he's going to help me. That guy, I wouldn't even want him to touch me, But then, when the Samaritan doesn't pass by on the other side, and he begins to approach this man lying in the ditch, this man probably has a lot of fear. He's going to come kick me, or see what else he can rip off of me. see what sort of things he can steal from me. And this man lying in the ditch looks up at that Samaritan, and he sees everything that he's made fun of with all the caricatures him and his buddies laughed at, all the jokes that they made, two Samaritans walk into a bar, all that kind of thing. That's a knock-knock joke, by the way, because they hit the bar twice, knock-knock. Anyways, so he is probably thinking, this guy's going to kill me. If I'm not dead now, I'm going to be dead in a few seconds, right? And then the Samaritan asks him in that classic Samaritan accent, "Are you okay?" And he's probably going, "That's the accent that I made fun of, That's, me and my boys working on the farm. We saw a Samaritan on the road. We made fun of the accent, catcalled him, laughed at him, And here he is, that same accent that he made fun of his whole life. He laughed at and despised every bit of him, is asking this man if he's okay. And now his world has just been turned upside down, hasn't it? And what we find out from this parable is that being a neighbor isn't just about helping other people, but it can also be about being willing to receive help from other people. Understanding that just because they're from another nation or whatever doesn't mean they're inherently bad people, right? They have the ability to show mercy. They've got the ability to show compassion just as you do. And they're human beings just like you are. And they've sinned and come short of the glory of God just as you have. And so when we think about this in maybe a sort of a 21st century context, we might have, me lying in the ditch, and here comes a Church of Christ preacher down the road. And you're going, "Oh, good, member of the church." But he looks at you and says, "Sorry, pal, can't forsake the assembly. It's Sunday. It's almost 9:30. I got to get there." And he goes on to Bible class. And then you got a member of the church coming down. They're a little bit late to Bible class, but they ain't got to teach it. But they pass by on the other side too because they're already late, And then you got a Muslim man coming down, and you're going, "Oh man," because all these prejudices that we have towards Muslims because of 9/11 and things like that, you're going, "Man, I'm about to die. He's going to kill me in the name of Allah or something," right? But then he reaches down, he talks to you in that Mideastern accent, and he asks us if you're okay. Could you accept help in that situation? Would a lot of people in our nation accept help from that man in that situation? But this is what's happening in the parable. And this is the type of prejudice that they had towards the Samaritans. That same sort of level. And so what this parable teaches us is not just how to be kind to other people, but it's also how to be willing to receive help from even the most unlikely of situations, unlikely of people. And that's really kind of incredible to me because it shows that people of all nations, even people that don't worship the right way, right, from John chapter 4, people that we have no dealings with are still people and still have the ability to show compassion and love for their neighbor and show mercy towards others, as the text discusses here. And so not only we should be willing to give help to anybody, but we should be willing to receive help from anybody as well and understand the power of the gospel to dissolve these national differences and things like that between us. And so I was just thinking about that from the man in the ditch's perspective earlier today, so I thought I'd share that real quick message. You got any thoughts on it, Keith or Laura?
Well, I just always had a question that
Go for it.
silly, but can you scroll down to where Jesus asks at the end, which of these did it prove to be the neighbor? Okay, so he said the answer, the one that showed mercy, but isn't he said everybody's supposed to be our neighbor? So it kind of makes it sound like you should only be kind to those who are showing you mercy.
Well, what he's saying is that so this type of argument is something that Jesus does a lot. If an unjust judge can show mercy towards a woman that's asking for vengeance, how much more would God show mercy to his disciples? So in this situation, it's the same kind of argument. If we're to treat a Samaritan like a neighbor and show love and mercy towards them, then how much more should we show it the others, right? So I think that this is more, I think he's using the Samaritan, because that's the worst of the worst thing they could think of, to emphasize how much more they should show mercy towards everybody. That's the way I typically read it. Keith, do you have anything?
On that, no.
Oh, just on any of it?
Oh, man. Well, the whole lesson, I think, of the Good Samaritan is to teach us. You never know where God's love is going to be extended to you, or
right.
who it comes from.
That's true.
A lot of times we assume that we know the people that will extend that love towards us in our time of need.
Right.
And we're very often we are amazed at that love not coming from the people that we thought it would come from, but from that individual that we least thought it would come from.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the whole lesson is be open to God's love. I mean, the person that fell among the thieves could have continued to be a hard person. Could be continue to be a Jew and not have anything to do with the Samaritan.
Right.
He extended his help to him. He could have said, "No, you just go on like we don't. It's against our rules. We don't have anything to do with Samaritans. Just go ahead on. I'll just trust in God and I'll do the best I can." But very often, even the most staunch person who believes in a certain thing, when they're down and hurt or down on their luck and in a very vulnerable position in life, when love and help is extended, they very rarely turn it down.
Right.
They realize their condition. For one thing, he wasn't in the condition to turn it down.
Right,
correct. Laid on the side of the road.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And perhaps if he took that attitude and ran off the hill that was going to be extended to him, he could have lost his life.
Right.
So at that point, he wasn't at the point where he could be, I don't want to say choosy about who he would have compassion to him and who he would accept that from.
Oh yeah, and he could have been unconscious anyways this whole time. So
Yeah.
I was just trying to make a sort of a poetic point, I guess.
Yeah, so I just think that anybody in this world need to understand. My mind went to that scripture: be careful how you entertain strangers.
Angels.
You entertain angels. You don't ever know who knocks at your door or who you're going to come in contact daily with, because the very person that we think that are angels, that are righteous people, that are people that will stand up and do what's right, those are the people that will let you down. And it comes, the help, the reassurance in God and all that comes from the least likely places in life, and from least likely people.
Right.
So you have to be open to it.
I was reading in Judges the other day, and I read the story of Balaam and his donkey,
Yeah.
And you can't help just laugh at that, because that's a lesson that could come from there as well, is that help might come from the most unlikely places.
Right.
And if we're not open to receiving it, then who knows what opportunities we might miss out on. Well, all right. Caden, do you have anything else? You've had a lot to say so far. All right. Well, that'll be good then, I guess. Y'all good with there?